You know, they don't think of conscience as knowledge. Conscience is knowledge. It's not action, it's not behavior. It's knowledge. Again, knowledge is the way out of this. Okay? And this is the knowledge that has to be developed. Conscience comes from the Latin prefix con, meaning together, and the Latin verb sciere, meaning to know or to understand. You put them together, to know together, to understand together. Conscience is common sense. Common sense knowing. Common sense knowledge. Literally. From the etymological breakdown of the word. Con, together, science, to know. That's why the problem is people don't have common sense. That's why I'm sitting there almost laughing hysterically that I need to try to teach common sense to people. The ridiculousness of it. What we all need to be doing is doing that work, you know? I know you guys get a lot of this. We need to start reaching out to other people. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. Conscience, the definition of it, is the definitive knowledge of the objective difference between right and wrong according to natural law. Objective. Definitive. Okay, it's not up for debate. It exists inherently and objectively. It can be understood, known, discovered. This is different from action. Conscience is the knowledge, then we act upon it. Okay? So it's different from understanding something and acting upon it. Right? To have conscience is to have common sense. It's to know the difference between right and wrong and understand that difference deeply. Then we're going to convert that into action. We exercise conscience. The exercise of conscience is actually action. The exercise of conscience is the free will choice of right action over wrong action once the definitive knowledge of the objective difference between right and wrong according to natural law has been acquired and integrated into the being. We acquire that knowledge first, understand it, then we act in either accordance with it or disharmony with it. If we act in accordance with it, it's called the exercise of conscience. That's action. The law of freedom. This is one of the basic laws within the body of natural law. It's real simple. The law of freedom states that freedom and morality are directly proportional. It's a mathematical equation that works 100% of the time flawlessly. As morality increases, freedom increases. As morality declines, freedom declines. This means the more moral a population is, the freer it becomes. The more immoral a population is, the deeper into bondage and slavery it goes. Another way of saying this is to say that the presence of truth and morality in the lives of the people of any given society is always inversely proportional to the presence of tyranny and slavery in that society. The more truth and morality there is, the less tyranny and slavery there is. The less truth and morality there is, the more tyranny and slavery there is. That's the law of freedom. And many people don't want to understand that. That these two things are inextricably interwoven and connected and can never be separated from each other. The presence of truth and morality in a society and the presence of freedom or its lack in a society. True freedom can never exist in a society that embraces moral relativism, which is the idea that there is no inherent and objective difference between right and wrong. So that humanity may just arbitrarily create or decide right and wrong for themselves. That's the ideology called moral relativism. As I've said before, it is the second tenet of the satanic religion. And it is deeply entrenched in this country and in the world. In our polls that we conducted, the psychological little tabulations that we did asking several people questions, 2/3 of people were moral relativists. 66%. Think about that. 2 out of 3 people believe there's no such thing as an objective difference between right and wrong and feel these are just constructs that exist by human beings and we get to make up what's right and what's wrong. 2/3 of people. That's where we're at. That's where we're really at. Natural law versus man's law or government. Here's the differences. Natural law is based upon principles and truth, meaning things that are inherent to creation and are not made by humankind. Natural law can only either be harmonized with due to knowledge and understanding or rejected due to ignorance. So it's not something that is based on compliance because of we fear the punishment that would result of not understanding it. Okay, if you don't understand it and live according to it, the result is inescapable. Because men and women are not actually creating the result. Okay? The universe is bringing that result to us, intelligently and dynamically. All right? In other words, once again, this is about consequences. You behave a certain way, there's certain consequences. You change the behavior, you'll change the consequential results. Natural law is universal, which means that it exists and applies anywhere in the universe regardless of physical location. There is no place you can go in the physical universe to escape natural law. Let me know if you find a way out of this universe and into another where natural law no longer applies, and we'll take a look at it together. But until you figure out the way out of this universe and into a place that's not governed by law, you're bound by natural law. Okay? Natural law is eternal. It will exist for as long as the universe exists, and it is immutable. Exists and applies for as long as the universe exists and cannot be changed by anything humanity is capable of doing or any other species in the universe is capable of doing for that matter. Man's law, on the other hand, let's look at how this contrasts with natural law. It's not based on principles and truth, it's based on dogmatic beliefs that are programs that are running in the human mind. These are constructs of the mind that operate like programs. Man's law is complied with due to the fear of the punishment that will be conducted upon people who attempt to not comply with it. It's most of the only reason people ever comply with the law of man. And that's a very low state of consciousness, fear. That really is only going to get you all the negative things that we say we don't want if we're in that vibration. Man's law differs with location based upon the whim of legislators, like prohibition. Well, I'm allowed to smoke marijuana in one state, and then I could be jailed for it in another. My freedom can be taken if I cross this imaginary line. Okay, I'm a gun owner, okay? If I take certain weapons that I own across an imaginary line, I could be jailed for years. But over this side of the imaginary line, it's okay. And you're just exercising a right. Over here, it's morally wrong. We'll cage you for it. Over here, yeah, you're allowed to do that. You can have that high-capacity magazine. But over here, you're going into a cage for it, just by crossing an imaginary barrier called a state border. And people think that makes sense. They think the moral relativism of man's law makes sense. They actually believe something can be moral in one place and immoral in another place. You know? That's cognitive dissonance. That's holding two contradictory notions in the mind simultaneously and accepting them both when they're clear contradictions with each other. It's called lying to yourself. Let's be honest about what it really is. It's called lying to yourself. Man's law changes with time based upon the whim of legislators, which is also moral relativism. Prohibition in the 1920s. Oh, it was legal to possess and consume alcohol. Then for years it became illegal to do so. Then it switched back to becoming magically moral again. We won't cage you for doing it. Well, it changes over time based on our preferences and likes and dislikes. Yeah, we get to make up what law is, what right and wrong are. It's called moral relativism. All right? And it's one of the tenets of Satanism. So what does this mean for the law of man, actually? You know, the people seem to have so much respect for. You know, oh, we're a nation of laws written by men. You know, we don't give a damn about moral law. We don't really give a damn about what's right and wrong. You know, but we have so much respect for the law of man, which people actually believe is somehow based in morality, when it's nothing of the kind could be further from couldn't get any further from the truth than that. It's based in moral relativism, which is about the whims of the legislator at any given time or place. You know, you listen to certain forms of music in certain countries in the Middle East, you could be jailed for years just by putting a certain song on. Imagine this. Now, and we would think that's unacceptable and deplorable. Yeah, we think you have this 30-round magazine here. This state only allows 10 cartridges to go into a magazine. I bring the physical object, even if it's not loaded with any ammunition, into another state. I can be put in a cage. Physical piece of plastic. You know, it's just total nonsense. Either something's a right and you're allowed to own it and you need to be responsible for it, or it's not a right because you're harming somebody. You know, it doesn't get any simpler than that. So what's this all mean for man's law? In light of natural law, what does it mean? To understand natural law, what does that mean for the laws of man here on earth? Well, what it actually means, it's simple if-then logic to apply. If a particular man-made law is in harmony with natural law, then it follows logically that it is redundant. It is stating the obvious. It is stating what is already known. It's like saying, I'm going to write down, yes, during the day the sky refracts a blue frequency. The sky is blue. I'm going to write that down and make it so. Well, it's redundant. It's self-evident. You can go out in the sky and look at the natural color of the sky on a clear day and see what the frequency is with your own eyes. No, you don't need to have it written down. Okay? It's a redundancy. So if it's in harmony already with natural law, it's stating a truth that is already there. It's an inherent truth. It's pre-existing. It's self-evident. Therefore, the writing down of that concept and calling it a law is irrelevant and unnecessary. Now let's look at the opposite. What if something that man writes down as a law is in direct opposition to natural law? So if a particular man-made law is in opposition to natural law, it follows logically that it is both false, meaning that it is incorrect. Okay, that's what natural law is. It's based in truth, that which is. And it's also immoral. Because if it's not based in natural law, it means that it is doing something that is actually harming somebody by taking something from them that doesn't belong to you. Like taxation, like permits and licensing, like suspending rights that do already exist, etc., so forth. All right? So, therefore, it's wrong, and it cannot be legitimately binding upon anyone. You can't write down a wrong and say, this is morally binding upon you, even though it creates harm, it causes harm, yet you must follow it. You know, and people believe this. We asked in the natural law seminar, how many people believe that if a law is passed and it restricts a right that you feel you have naturally because that action that it's saying you may not do causes no one else any harm? Do you have any moral obligation to obey that law until you could find a way to get it changed? And over 2/3 of people said, yes, you have a moral obligation to obey that law. Because these people have the moral right to issue commands and write down laws that constrain you, even if that behavior actually doesn't harm anybody and therefore is a natural right. You would still have to try to find a way to get that law changed. Nonsense. Nonsense. No one can be legitimately bound to a dictate of man that prevents somebody from exercising a natural right. It's called mind control, is what it's called. So in light of the differences between man's law and natural law, in light of natural law, man's law is both irrelevant and unnecessary, as it is either redundant because it is in harmony with natural law, or it is completely immoral because it is in direct opposition to natural law. This is a system of slavery that is not needed. There is equality under natural law, perfect equality. Everyone has the exact same rights. No one has any more or less rights than anyone else. Also, since rights are not created by humanity, and since they are the birthright of humanity, gifted to us by the creator of the universe, no human being or group of human beings is actually capable, in reality, of granting rights to anyone else, nor is any human being capable of revoking rights from anyone else. Everybody has the same rights. No one can make up a new right. No one can grant a right to somebody that is actually a wrong. Does not exist, never has existed, never will exist. This is an illusory belief system. All right? I'm not telling you people don't believe that can be done. I'm telling you in reality, in truth, it can never be done. Chris Leispooner phrased it pretty well. He said, government is nothing but men acting in concert. The morality and value of government, like any other association of men, will be no greater and no less than the morality and value of the men comprising it. Since government is nothing but men, its inherent, quote, authority to act is in no way greater or different than the, quote, authority to act of any individuals in isolation, like that example of two people on the planet. Government has no magic powers or, quote, authority that is not possessed by private individuals. Let he who asserts that government may do that which the individual may not do assume the onus of proof. That means the burden of proof, and demonstrate his contention. And you know what? There's nobody on this planet that can do that. Because when it comes down to it, if you're telling somebody else they may either commit a wrong against somebody else or prevent someone else from exercising a right, that's a lie. And that does not exist. Not in reality. It exists in a diseased mind is where it exists. Only in a sick mind is where that belief exists. You have to be imbalanced in the mind, in the psyche, to believe that that's true. It's a mental illness. I mean, that's what it really is. The word government, you break it down. People say this word every day almost, and yet they've never looked at the etymological roots of the word. It comes from the Latin verb gubernare. Once again, no V in classical Latin. No V, okay? So again, V's were rendered as either B's or P's in classical Latin language. So you could write this in what would be more modern Latin as guvernare with a V. But in classical Latin or ancient Latin, there is no V, so it would have been rendered with a B, gubernare. Now, what's the election of a governor called? It's called a gubernatorial election. Gubernatorial. Gubernare is in there, okay? Gubernare means to control. The verb gubernare in Latin means to control. The Latin noun mens, which is where the second part of the word ment is derived from, means mind. Okay? So you put these together, and the word government actually literally, from its etymological roots, means to control the mind, or in other words, mind control. Now, I'm going to put something else up here for a moment. The etymological origin of the English suffix ment, M-E-N-T, is often debated in this etymological breakdown, all right? And I've gotten stuff about this constantly, and I've told people I'm not interested in hearing about it anymore. I know where this comes from. I know why the creators of the English language made it so, made it like this, okay? It is overwhelmingly clear by people who have studied linguistics and the origins of words, okay, in English from ancient languages, that the creators of the English language deliberately chose the Latin noun mens, meaning mind, to represent or mean in English the state of or the condition of. And this was done in direct keeping with the first principle of natural law, as we've already discussed, the principle of mentalism, which demonstrates that in order for any particular thing, event, or circumstance, any state or condition to exist in manifested reality, it, as it currently does, which is known as the plane of effects, it must have first existed in the plane of causality or the mental realm, the mind. Okay? We've already looked at that principle of natural law. So, anything that ends in ment, the original etymological derivation means that it was made that way first by a state of mind which led to its creation in physical reality. Okay? Any word you can think of that ends in M-E-N-T, meaning the state of or the condition of, means it happened in mind first, and therefore it led to the state of or the condition of in physical reality. Okay? So, when I say that government means mind control, It literally does, and that is an accurate etymological breakdown. Okay? The word mens was deliberately chosen for specific reasons. And I just explained the reason of that meaning, the state of or the condition of. And many people want to hotly contest that. I'm telling you outright, they're wrong. They don't understand why that was chosen. Mens, meaning mind, was chosen deliberately to mean the state of or the condition of. Government is based on this illusory and false concept called authority. People think certain people are authorities, that they actually have rights that other people don't have. The right to command, compel, coerce, and tell people, this is right, this is what you're going to do, and if you disagree, I have the power to actually compel, coerce, or constrain you against your will. If you're not harming anybody, even in the taking of that action. Authority is based upon an equal illusion that is called jurisdiction. Now, if we break down this word, it comes from the Latin noun. Jurisdiction comes from Latin, jus juris. Jus juris in Latin means law. Juris is the possessive case. And the Latin verb dictere. So, jus dictere, juris dictere, jurisdiction. Okay? Dictere means to say or to speak. Thus, jurisdiction literally means to say what the law is. Or in other words, we get to make up what the law is. The law is not something that exists in nature and is based upon right and wrong and truth and morality. No, we get to make it up. We're God. We get to say what's right and what's wrong. And therefore, since we make the law, we're the owners of these people. They're in our jurisdiction. You know, we own them. And we get to make up what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. Authority ultimately is an illusion, again, of a diseased mind, a diseased psyche, based entirely in violence and built upon the erroneous and dogmatic belief that some people are masters who have the moral right to issue commands and others are slaves who have a moral obligation to obey the commands of the masters. I don't care what you want to call it. You can euphemize it any way you want. I call it what it really is. Slavery. That's what it really is. It doesn't come down to anything else. You can call it whatever you want, euphemize it, try to make it sound as nice or as pleasant as possible. It's all one thing. It's called slavery. It's always immoral, and it needs to be ended. That's it. And we have to develop the knowledge and the courage to end it. The knowledge, the care, and the courage to end it. The belief in the legitimacy of, quote, authority, this illusory nonsense notion, is the belief in the legitimacy of slavery. Anybody who believes in that authority is legitimate and government is legitimate, whether they want to admit it or not, or know it or not, or understand it or not, I don't care what they believe. They are advocating the legitimacy of slavery. That's not my belief. I don't care who calls that my belief. I'm just looking right into the camera and saying this. Because I know the people in this room know that that's not my belief. I'm telling anybody who's listening to this, that's not my belief. That's eternal truth. Eternal truth. Okay? You believe in these concepts, you are a supporter of slavery. The end. That's how it really is. Not because I said so. Because that's how it really is. Okay? And that's called mind control. For somebody to believe that slavery is legitimate, you gotta be under deep mind control. You gotta be either that or a sick, psychopathic, absolute piece of garbage. Okay? One of those things or another is true if you believe in those concepts. And again, I'm not afraid to tell it to somebody right to their face like that. I don't care. I'm not here to serve truth, make friends, or be liked. I'm here to tell people what the truth. I'm not here to serve human beings, make friends, or be liked. I am here to serve the truth. Whether it will be accepted is not up to me. I'm doing what I'm charged to do by creation. Okay? Whether it's accepted is somebody else's karma, not mine. Ultimately, authority is the idea that man can become God and through, quote, jurisdiction, dictate the law. What the dark occultists of this world, who are behind ostensible governments in the world. You know, they set up all of these institutions as temples, right? What this sick psychopathic priest class ultimately believes is they're going to become God. We're going to turn natural law on top of its head, and we're going to rule in hell. That's it. We're going to rule in hell. It's a religion. This is a religion. Okay, government's a religion. The concept of authority is a religion. Most people don't see it that way. And I mean religion in the term of false religion. Okay? It comes from the Latin relegare. I laugh when I hear people say it comes from relegare or relegare, R-E-L-E-G-A-R-E, or relegare, okay? Which means to read over again, to go back over something that you've already read and read it again. It's the most ridiculous, nonsensical derivation I've ever heard for the word religion, to reread. I mean, please, let's put this to bed, folks. Religion does not mean to reread. It doesn't come from relegare or relegare. I can't remember which infinitive is used for that verb offhand, but it comes from religare, hence religion, R-E-L-I-G-A-R-E. All right? Relegare means to tie back, to hold back, or to thwart from forward progress by tying or binding. Tying up so that you can't move forward. That's what relegare is, and that is the etymological root of religion. Because a false religion is a system of control that is based in unchallenged dogmatic belief, which keeps the mind in a prison in order to hold back the progress of consciousness. And that's where the bulk of humanity is at, in a brain cage. They're in the mind cage, okay? There is a positive connotation of religion. It also means to reunite with. And what we need to reunite ourselves with is the truth and common sense and natural law and a knowledge that there's no such thing as legitimacy to slavery. That's what we need to reunite with, you know? And then we'd be living with true religion. We'd be practicing true religion instead of fake religion. We got to stop trying to make our religion truth. And we got to start making truth our religion. That's what needs to be done.